passes of 412 tubes per pass. So we have totally 814 tubes. Total number of tubes 814 tubes. Per pass we have 412 tubes. The tubes are of 16 millimeter diameter. So this is the dimension given. The heat exchanger has 5 baffles on the cell side and the spacing between the baffles is 178 mm. Okay, so they have given the tube diameter. Okay, so the heat exchanger has 5 baffles. Okay, so we have 5 baffles, so which means we have 6 partitions. It would be like this, I can say. So it will be like this, correct? So this is your SLN tube heat exchanger. This is your cell part. Here you have a tube. This is your head. Okay. So here you have this is the nozzle inlet. This is cell side fluid inlet. Okay. So they didn't mention anything about the flow arrangements. So we can we no need to bother, or we can assume the type of flow arrangement. Okay. So here they have mentioned only about 2 tube passes. So you have the pass partition plate here. So here you have 412 tubes. Okay. Similarly, here you have the tubes. So we have only one cell pass, the cell fluid coming in and flows like this, and it goes out. So this is cell fluid out. Only once it flows. Okay. So tube side fluid, it flows like this. Okay. So this is your written head like arrangement. So all the fluids coming out at this end, and again it's redirected to the fluids, and it goes. So here you have tube side fluid nozzle out. Okay, this is the flow arrangement. Here they have given tube diameter, cell diameter, number of tube passes, and also number of baffles. So baffles we have like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so your fluid is flowing like this. Okay, it goes like this. Okay, or you can, okay. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 portions. Okay, so the spacing between the baffles also given 178 mm. Calculates its compactness and state whether it is compact exchanger. Okay, so these are all the details given. Compactness of heat exchanger is the surface area density. We know what is area density. So area density you can call that is area. So area density is heat transfer area divided by volume of the heat exchanger. Okay. So if it's this greater than 700 meter square per meter cube for heat, compact heat exchanger, it should be greater than that. So we have to check. Okay. So we will check that. So compactness or area density is total heat transfer area to total volume of heat exchanger. So total heat transfer area is number of tubes times surface area of one tube. Surface area of one tube. So number of tubes we know. Okay, it's given in the problem. Okay, because per pass we have tubes, that is 4, 1, 2 tubes we have. Okay, so total number of tubes is 824. So the diameter is given, that is 16 mm. So 16 into 10 power minus 3. Okay, so this L tube length is not given, but the baffle spacing is given. So it's possible to calculate the length of the tube using baffle spacing. Okay. So as I said earlier, here you have 5 baffles. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 space. So 6 times of 178 approximately. That will give the tube length. Okay, so length of the tube is number of baffles plus 1 into baffle spacing. So 6 times of 178. So approximately, or this is this is the minimum, at least minimum length. Yeah, the tube length is 1.068 meters. Okay, so you have to calculate the heat transfer area. Okay, this is A, that is N pi D naught L. So A is pi into 16 into 10 power minus 3 into length of the tube into number of tubes. This is a surface area of one tube. So heat transfer area means it is surface area, that you have to remember. So you should not calculate the cross sectional area. When you calculate the velocity or mass flow rate or volumetric flow rate, those cases you have to use cross sectional area. Okay, so heat transfer area means it is surface area. Okay, so here volume of the exchanger, here you have to use the cross sectional area, but the diameter is your cell diameter. So this is the cross sectional area. So volume is L times of cross sectional area, where L is the length of the exchanger. So pi by 4 into 0.9 square into 1.068. Okay. So we are considering only these portion because here only we have the heat transfer phenomena. Okay. So this is the effective length. Sometimes they will call, sometimes effective volume you can say. Okay, so anyway, compactness includes all these things, this inner portion also, but the compactness of the exchanger we can define based on this. This is one approximation. Okay, so pi by 4.9 square into 1.068. So this would be the volume of the exchanger. So compactness of the exchanger is area by volume. So 44.24 divided by 0.68 is approximately 65 times. Okay. So compactness of given heat exchanger is 65 meter square per meter cube. That's why selective heat exchangers are most of the times called non-compact heat exchanger. But it is very established one in the process industries, and the technical know-how is very much established. Okay, most of the times it is very easy to use, and the maintenance part, or you can say the compatibility, availability, maintenance, those things, design. Okay, then installation, everything is even though it has more complex parts, it is low maintenance and well established. So we will go for most of the times the selective heat exchanger for larger heat capacity. Okay, so the given heat exchanger is non-compact heat exchanger. Okay, so with this I stop. Next,
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I'm sort of confused in the length of tube, number of baffles plus 1 into baffle spacing. Can you explain that?
Yeah. You have a. Oh, you have. So I draw it again.
In the next slide, you have drawn the diagram, right?
Yeah, that I mistake. I changed it. I end my slide, so it has gone. So I draw it again, no problem. Fine. So this is your cell, okay? So here you have head. So this is connected now, like this. So this is flanges, this cell body, and the header are they are connected with flanges. Okay. So here you have the back partition plate. Your cell side plate goes and it goes like this, and written here goes like this and goes on. Okay, this is your cell side feed in, cell side feed out. So the number of baffles is 5. So you can say 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay. So the baffle spacing is given 178 meter. That is the baffle spacing. This is 178 meter. So this is your tube sheet. Here you have tube sheet. Here also you have tube sheet. These tube sheets are supporting the tubes. Okay, this is your baffle spacing. So this is one. This is second baffle spacing. This is third baffle spacing. This is fourth one. This is fifth one. This is sixth one. So 5 baffle spacing means you have NB plus 1 space in the exchanger. That
Into baffle spacing, yeah. Okay.
yeah, what?
NB plus 1 into the space between the baffles and
Yeah, that is the baffle spacing. BS. That will give the length of the tube.
I got it. Thank you.
So like this you can calculate, but anyway this is approximated. This will give the effective length of the exchanger. So in cylinder heat exchanger we can see in detail what it is. Okay. So in detail we can study about baffles, those things. Okay. So anybody else having doubt? Compactness is being calculated like this. Okay. So I end the slide so I can go to design of heat exchanger. General design procedure we will see, then we move to double pipe heat exchanger. So now we will see the general design procedure of tubular heat exchangers. So mostly we will see the tubular heat exchanger design here. Then I try to take some other like flat heat exchanger or heat exchanger in agitated vessel. So these are all things we will discuss time permits. Okay. So design of tubular heat exchanger. These are all different steps. Totally we had approximately 11 steps in the design of heat exchanger. The very first step is that we have to define the heat transfer rate, fluid flow rates and temperature. These are all the main important things. You have to define the value of Q and mass flow rate, or in terms of you can say volumetric flow rate. Then we have to define this capital T normally is being used to represent temperature of the hot fluid, and small t is used to represent the temperature of the cold fluid. Here you have THI, that is hot fluid in, then TH naught, that is hot fluid out, then TCI and TC naught. This is one way to represent the temperature, or sometimes they will say T1, T2. 1 means inlet, 2 means outlet. Capital T represents hot fluid. Okay. Then T1, T2. This T1 is cold fluid inlet temperature or cold fluid outlet temperature. The small t represents cold fluid temperature. Okay. Sometimes the temperatures are being represented using the end where the fluids are entering. If this is the end 1, this is the end 2, then they will say this is, if your hot fluid enters here, this will be T1. So many methods are there. So you can always check the temperatures. So this is T1, THI, TC0 or T1, T2. This 1 and 2 represents the from the end where the fluid enters. Okay. So this is T1, this is T2. If the cold fluid enters here, this is T2, this is T1. Where here T1 is the cold fluid outlet temperature, this T2 is the cold fluid inlet temperatures. So these are all normal notations that is being used in process industries. So the mass flow rate or volumetric flow rate, that you can see the heat transfer rate Q, that is the heat duty of the exchanger. This is the main thing that is being decided. Okay, by material balance and energy balance, we can get these two values, heat transfer rate and heat flow rates. Okay, so this is the first step, because these things will decide. This is the objective mostly. For this objective, we have to design the exchanger. Okay, for to transfer this much amount of heat, we have to design the exchanger. That's the point. So we know the general design procedure. First, what we will do, we will specify the need, or we will fix the requirements. Then we will collect the data. So here we can collect the data that is required for heat exchanger design. Okay, so the main data is fluid physical properties. Fluid physical property means density, viscosity, thermal conductivity, specific heat, latent heat, lambda, or you can say, okay. So all these things, this lambda also you can collect from for the temperature range, or the particular pressure also you should know. Sometimes if you are handling the liquids, okay, such cases you are phase change liquids, then pressure is the major one. So rho, Cp, mu, K, thermal conductivity of liquid, hot fluid and cold fluid, all the fluids, okay. Then you should know the thermal conductivity of the metal wall, Kw also you should know, okay, if it is a cell and heat exchanger. So these are all the properties required. Apart from fluid physical properties, we can collect all this data. Okay, so once it is being collected, these data will be used in later stage. So the heat transfer rate Q, based on this, approximately you can identify the type of exchanger to be used. Okay, whether we need double pipe exchanger or cell tube heat exchanger or plate heat exchanger. Okay, here you have to collect also the nature of the fluids, whether it is corrosive. Okay, whether the and also you have to check these properties, thermal conductivity or specific heat varies with temperature, whether it's function of temperature. Maybe your K is function of temperature. Okay, or your Cp is function of temperature again. Okay, density, viscosity. Sometimes in petrochemical industries, these properties also change with respect to temperatures. Okay. If it is compressed fluid, with respect to pressure, all these properties will change. Okay, so we should have proper data. So the physical property data, collection of data, or taking the data from the reliable source is very much required. So as a chemical engineer, you should know where you can refer to get this data. You can refer Paris Chemical Engineers Handbook. Okay, that's one of the source. Okay, or you can go from nomograms. Okay, nomographs you can select. Okay, lot of for example, steam means you can go for steam tables. Okay, many books are available for physical property estimation. Okay, even in McCaban's CR volume 6, you can refer how to calculate these fluid properties. Sometimes you can directly take, sometimes you can use group contribution method. Okay, what are the groups available in the fluid structure? Okay, based on that also, whenever you don't get that data for fluid properties, you can get them using this type of methods. Okay, so lot of books are also available to get this. Read is one of the it is author name, so you can refer this book to refer for properties. Okay, so if you use any refrigerants, then you have to take refrigerant data book. Okay, So what is the temperature, pressure, at what temperature, what is the enthalpy values, what is the latent heat values, okay, entropy values, okay, so many things you can take from these tables, okay. So then once then you can find out the tube type of exchanger used, cell and heat exchanger or double pipe heat exchanger or plate heat exchanger, okay. We will see one by one when we discuss about what the advantage of the exchanges later stage, okay. So then once you have selected the type of exchanger, then you have to select the trial value of overall heat transfer coefficient. So that the general design equation we know, that is Q is equal to UA delta Tm, where Q is the heat duty, heat transfer rate, okay. Then this U you have to assume initially, because we know the cell side fluid or tube and tube side fluid, or you can say hot fluid, tube fluid, that is cold fluid, sorry, hot fluid and cold fluid only we know, okay. So then based on the nature and properties of the fluid, okay, and type of exchanger, then only you can decide whether which fluid will go through tube side or cell side, okay. The allocation of fluid is another component in the design of exchangers, okay. Then we will see this based on its amount of heat transfer rate or volumetric flow rate, or you can say fouling nature, corrosive nature, then you can say based on different properties, okay, how you can go ahead, fouling nature, okay, pressure, temperature, so many things are there, so many factors has to be considered, to allocate the fluids, okay. So anyway, we know the fluid, this is cell fluid and hot fluid and cold fluid. So for these combinations, you have to select the trial value of overall heat transfer coefficient. So overall heat transfer coefficient you have to use it here, okay. That will give the resistance. This U is overall heat transfer coefficient, how much heat is conducted. Heat conductance is explained by this overall heat transfer coefficient, okay. So we know what are all the resistance that is being, for example, if you see this diagram, so let's take cell side and tube side. This is your tube wall, this is your tube wall, so that's okay. So here this tube wall separates the hot fluid and cold fluid. So the thickness of the wall is A, or you can say T, whatever may be, some books they use T, okay. So this is the metal wall, this is hot fluid and cold fluid. If the cold fluid flows outside and hot fluid, this is two sides, okay. So hot fluid is going this side, cold fluid is going other side of the tube wall, okay. So here you can see the temperature profile. This is the bulk fluid temperature TC1, cold fluid temperature. So this temperature profile, this is the temperature profile of your cold fluid. This is the temperature profile of your hot fluid. This is the wall hot fluid temperature at the wall. This is the cold fluid temperature at the surface. TS means surface, you can say. So this is the temperature. Okay, so here it's not linear. It's like a exponential one. Okay, so you might have studied this boundary layer, temperature thermal boundary layer and momentum boundary layer in your momentum transfer and heat transfer subjects, boundary layer formation. So within the boundary layer you have a greater changes in the temperature. After that what happens? It reaches the steady state. Okay, you may have studied like this. This is your surface, the fluid flows like this. Okay, so this is your velocity profile. Okay, so this is your velocity profile. Here the changes is drastic. So after certain things, what will happen? Certain thickness, this delta, you can say delta y or boundary layer thickness. Here at this delta, what happens? Your UV a local velocity of the fluid V will be 0.99 times of V average. Correct? That is the definition for boundary layer. Correct? So when the distance at which in y direction at which the velocity reaches 99% of its average velocity or bulk fluid velocity, here it is v, or you can say v infinity sometimes. Okay, then this is called momentum boundary layer. Similarly, thermal boundary layer you have to define with delta T values. Okay, so here the variation is there. So this is your hot fluid temperature variation, cold fluid temperature variation. So this is your another one, that is scalar fouling. Okay, if you have a clean exchanger, what happens? This would be the this would be your profile. Okay, so you don't have any thermal resistance. But in process industry, the loss is in higher side because of this fouling. Loss is in higher side because of this fouling. Okay, anyway, in heat exchanger design, because over the period, when the heat flows over the surface, the scaling will form. Even in our human body, okay, so we are having these type of problems. Over the period, fat will accumulate over the veins. Okay, so then we are going for so much of chemical treatments, or you can say you can take medicines and you can minimize or you can reduce the fat accumulation over the vein surfaces. Okay, so this fouling is formed in both the sides of the wall because of the nature of the hot fluid and cold fluid and hot fluid. Okay, so this is also will offer one resistance. Okay, so here also we have one resistance, that is called film resistance. So this is scaling or fouling, you can call both the sides. So it's very difficult because over the period only this settling of particles on the surface takes place. We have so many different types of fouling: precipitation fouling, then particulate fouling, you can say freeze fouling, freeze fouling, chemical reaction fouling, then corrosion fouling, then biofouling. So many different types of fouling we have. Okay, one is called precipitation fouling. Precipitation fouling means it depends on the solubility of the solute present in the process fluid. Okay, so normally what will happen? The solubility will increase with increase in temperature. Some cases, for example, calcium sulfate, its inverse solubility salt. Okay, so after certain temperature, the solubility will increase. After that, what will happen? The solubility will come down with increase in temperature. They are called inverse solubility salts. Okay, so when temperature increases in the hot fluid side, so if this inverse solubility salts, what will happen? They settle on the surface, or you can call it as crystallization fouling. You can say the crystallization fouling also. Okay, so this will settle on the solids, so you will get a problem. Okay, so mainly in food process industries, or you can say this dairy plants. Okay, then sometimes this desalination plants, we will experience this type of foulings. Okay, so this calcium hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, magnesium silicate, calcium sulfate, these are all the salts mainly settle on the surface due to variation in temperature of the variation in temperature on the solid, variation on the temperature due to variation of temperature, and they will set the crystals will form on the surface. Okay, sometimes particulate fouling, especially this will happen in power plants. Okay, so you have unburned coal particles. Sometimes fly in flue gas, you may have fly ash. Okay, so these are all the particulates available in the streams. When you use this flue gas, okay, or when you use when you use waste heat recovery, during waste heat recovery, you will use this fly ash or so many things in the heat exchanger. So that time what will happen? This type of particulate fouling is possible. Okay, they are also called as sedimentation fouling, because in earlier case Precipitation fouling, they are soluble in the process fluid, then because of temperature range, they will settle on the surface. But this case in particulate fouling, what will happen? They are they are not soluble in the fluid, but they are particles, suspended particles in the process fluid. Okay, so over the period it will stick on the surface and settle. Sedimentation fouling is possible. Okay, in freeze fouling means sometimes what will happen, if higher melting components in the fluid freeze on the surface, especially in the cold fluid size. So in the cold fluid, if it has higher melting points, so if the temperature reduces below its freezing point, what will happen? Freezing of the solid, freezing of the fluid will take place on the surface. Okay, so these leads to a fouling. These are all different types of fouling. Then chemical reaction fouling. Chemical reaction fouling is different. Corrosion fouling is different. Chemical reaction fouling is the reaction inside the fluid streams causes fouling. So the reaction between the fluids, if it is, we have seen direct contact type exchanges. Okay, so such cases, if there is any reaction between these fluids at a particular temperature conditions, okay, so the precipitation or solid particle formation, this leads to scaling. Okay, they are called chemical reaction fouling. This corrosion fouling means this fluid will react with the solid surface of the heat exchanger surface. Okay, heat exchange, the fluid will contact, and it has there will be some reaction between the hot fluid or cold fluid with the solid surface of the exchanger. This leads to corrosion fouling. So sometimes what will happen, this type of especially this corrosion fouling is more predominant when you use liquid streams than gas streams. Okay, so biofouling means biological organisms in the liquid. Okay, so they will form a thin layer or a thin layer over the surface. Okay, that leads to fouling. They are called biofouling. Okay, so by chlorination, especially in water industries, you will use chlorination to avoid this biofouling. So these are all different types of fouling occurs in the heat exchangers. Okay, so this here normally this is like a metal wall. That's why here we have the temperature profile like a linear one. But in liquid stream, this is not linear one. We are approximating like this. Okay, but here we are approximating the temperature profile like a linear one. If this is the thin metal wall, then again we can say this is there is no change in the temperature. So the temperature of the wall at both the sides are equal. Otherwise, if there is any change, if the thickness is more, then here also we have thermal resistance due to the metal wall. Okay, so it may be like this. So you can also linear. So linearize this resistance or temperature profile like this. So we have to account all the resistances. This is film resistance. This is surface resistance. Sorry, fouling resistance. This is metal wall resistance. This is again fouling resistance. This is film resistance due to hot plate. Okay. So all these things we have to account, and you have to express in terms of like this. So in this equation, you can say this conductance, thermal conductance is clean. Because why it is clean? Here we didn't account the fouling resistance in this case. So the tube conductance is normally expressed in terms of or the product of heat transfer coefficient and heat transfer area H into A. That is the conductance. Okay. So here you have a hot inside fluid, outside fluid, outside the surface. Okay, outer fluid, or you can say this is inner fluid, which is flowing inside the tube. This is outside the tube. Okay, so this is the metal wall resistance 1 by Ka by T. So you all know the basics of heat transfer. That is Newton's law of cooling, and also you can say this is Fourier's law of heat conduction. These fundamentals you know. Okay, so you can express this Q in Newton's that is Fourier's law of heat conduction, you can say Q is equal to K A dt by dx. Okay, so this is your driving force. This, or you can say dx by Ka is your resistance. This is your flux. So that is the general definition, right? Flux is equal to driving force by resistance, where delta T or dt, temperature difference, is the driving force, where dx, there is a difference between or the thickness of the wall, okay, that is your resistance. Dx by Ka is your resistance. Okay, so resistance, inverse of resistance, you can say conductance. So that is 1 by Ka delta T. Okay, so this is your resistance. Okay, so resistance is like this. So 1 by T by Ka. Okay, so this is conductance. So you can express like this. Then the total conductance is 1 by R resistance. So this is 1 by HIAI plus 1 by T by KAM plus 1 by H naught AN inverse. So this is your total conductance. So total conductance you can express like this also. Okay, this is your overall heat transfer coefficient. Okay, 1 by UIAI here. Normally this A mean is A naught logarithmic mean. This is logarithmic mean, or you can take arithmetic mean also. That is A naught plus AI by 2. That is arithmetic mean. If your metal wall thickness is very small, such cases you can go with this. Or you can, if the metal wall is thickness is higher, then you have to calculate the logarithmic mean area. Okay, logarithmic mean area. So here 1 by UIAI is the overall heat transfer coefficient. The general equation is 1 by UA, correct? This RA is equal to UA, where 1 by R is equal to UA, correct? So here how to select the area, that is another factor. Whether we have UIAI means overall heat transfer coefficient based on the inside film, it's being calculated. So 1 by UI you can represent in both the ways. Okay, 1 by UI if you calculate based on inside area, okay, then 1 by UI AI is equal to 1 by HIAI plus T by KAM plus 1 by H naught A naught. Here 1 by U naught A naught is equal to 1 by HIAI plus T by KAM plus H naught A naught. So in heat transfer you might have studied in detail about this derivation of these equations. Okay, so what is how you can select this area? So one simple reason is which resistance dominates, then that will be the controlling film coefficient. Okay, so here you have one resistance, here you have one resistance, film coefficient. Normally this metal wall resistance is very small when compared to this film heat transfer coefficient. Okay, so this is heat transfer coefficient, no? So 1 by H will give the resistance. So whichever gives the more resistance, that will give the that will be the controlling resistance. Based on the controlling resistance, you can select the value. But in chemical engineering and heat exchanger design calculations, most of the time we will represent 1 by U naught A naught. We will calculate, we will design the equation, or we will calculate everything based on this U naught. Okay. So here you can see this is the tube wall. This is fouling happens. So here over this you have the film. Over this you have the film formed over this. So you have inside fouling deposit, outside fouling deposit. This is the temperature at 2 different points. Okay. So 1 by U naught is equal. Now in earlier case what we have seen, we didn't account this fouling resistance. So I said that this is a clean overall heat transfer coefficient, because in this equation, if you observe this equation, we didn't account this fouling coefficients. Okay, so if you account the fouling coefficients, then what will happen? The equation is expanded like this. Here you have two more terminologies, so that we have 5 different resistance here. This is inside film coefficient. This is outside film coefficient. This is metal wall resistance. These two are fouling resistance. This is AI means fouling resistance due to inside fluid, fouling resistance due to outside fluid. Okay, so 1 by U naught H naught is equal to like this. You have 5 different resistance. Okay, sometimes what this, as I said, this is U clean, correct? That's why we have this UC. So U suffix C means it's a clean overall heat transfer coefficient, where we didn't account the fouling coefficients. Okay, so now you can sum up these two resistance. You can represent in a single terminology like RF, fouling resistance. That is RF is equal to, you can add these two values, and you have to do the area correction, because this is calculated based on inside area. This is calculated based on outside area. 1 by AI by 1 by A naught. So it has to be corrected, no? So RFI by AI. So here you have RF naught by A naught. So if you multiply by A naught, both the terminologies, this is area correction. For AI you have, so this is, you can say RF naught. Sorry, RF overall, RF not RF not. Total fouling resistance is A naught by AI, because this is calculated based on A naught. But this is calculated based on AI. This AI and A naught is different. The surface area, no? This is surface area, that is pi D naught L. Inside free means by DI L. Okay, so you know D naught is DI plus 2 times of thickness. If you use this equation here, you can calculate everything like this. But in this case, the fouling thickness also you have to calculate. But we are doing the design very much earlier. Okay, so initially the performance of heat exchanger will be higher over the period. After 3 or 4 years, fouling occurs over the surface. This leads to decrease in the performance of the exchanger. Correct? So we have to account during the design itself, we have to account this fouling resistance. So for the nature of the fluid, okay, and by experience, we have to provide these values initially by considering with your experience, with your process engineer input, or by experience, you can select these values in the range. Okay, so for every process, if it is chilled water means we may have some range of fouling. Okay, so in process industries we have this data. So from the data you can take it. Okay, so like that you can account this. So for the combination of these fluids, you have to assume this value. So then you have to validate this U using these equations. Using these equations, you have to validate. Okay, so initially we cannot do this, because to calculate the film coefficient, we need the dimensions of the exchanger, because film coefficients normally calculated based on, yesterday I said we can use Cedar-Tate equation. Okay, if it is condensation, you have to use Nusselt equation. Okay, so these equations are empirical in nature, are dimensionless equation, which has the role of your operating variable, then dimensions of the system and fluid properties. So to calculate the operating variable, those things, you should have some trial values of dimensions. Okay, that's why we are assuming the value of U here, trial value, based on your hot fluid and cold fluid. For these combinations, you can select the trial value of U. Okay, then you can calculate the exchanger layout. So before that, we have one more terminology, delta Tm, that we have to discuss in detail again. Okay, so we can discuss. I stop up to this point. We will continue our discussion from the temperature difference tomorrow or next class. Okay. So up to this point, if you have any clarifications, please ask. So just I summarize the design steps. First is we have to calculate the duty, then flow rate, then temperature ranges. Then you have to collect the properties. Okay, for inlet fluid temperature, what are all the fluids? Outlet fluid temperature conditions, what are all the properties? If there is a huge variation, you have to calculate everything based on at that condition only. If the variation is less, then you can take the properties at average temperature conditions. Inside outside fluid temperature you can sum and you can make average at the temperature conditions. You can collect the data. Okay, at the data, those data can be used for your calculations. Then based on the flow rate, duty and temperature conditions, you can select approximately the type of exchanger. Okay, then later stage you have to validate the selection of exchanger also. Okay, then fourth step is you have to assume the overall heat transfer coefficient. Here I have give a detailed discussion on why this overall heat transfer coefficient plays major role, why we have to account this overall heat transfer coefficient in cell and heat exchanger designs. Okay, so what are all the things that affect the overall heat transfer coefficient? Film coefficient, inside fluid film coefficient, inside fluid fouling factor, metal wall resistance, then outside fluid fouling resistance, or you can say corrosive resistance, then outside fluid film coefficient. Different types of fouling also we have discussed. It's precipitation fouling, particulate fouling, then you can say freeze fouling, then chemical reaction fouling, then corrosion fouling, then biofouling. Different types of fouling we have discussed. Okay, so the fouling resistance also has to be accounted to calculate the overall heat transfer coefficient for better performance of the exchanger. Okay, so once it is being done, I can show some slides. So these portions we will discuss later.
Okay, sir.
So these things we can discuss in the next class. Okay, I'll stop at this point. Do you have any clarification at this point? If you have any doubts, please ask.
So,
Yes.
actually about finding, like assuming that U value, like we have to start with some approximate value, then check with those equations.
We have to assume the value overall heat transfer coefficient value U, okay, based on the nature of the fluid. Okay, so I can show some nomograms in next class so that you will get the idea. So for each combination, cell side fluid and tube side fluid, or tube side fluid, or annular pipe fluid, you have the combinations. Based on that, you have to take the value in the range. For example, water combination, both the sides water means they may give the range. It would be around 500 to 600 watt per meter square degree centigrade. So you can assume 500 or 600 or 550. Okay, so later by calculating this metal wall resistance, then assuming the fouling coefficient and calculating the film coefficient using Cedar Tate or Ditters-Boulter equations, then overall resistance you can calculate, and you can calculate the overall heat transfer coefficient. Correct? These values has to be compared, because this value is assumed to decide the layout of the exchanger, because Q is defined, your overall heat transfer coefficient value is assumed. Okay, and also we will calculate the delta T, or you can say LMTD or AMTD, based on the temperature conditions. So Q is equal to UA delta T. Q is known, U is assumed, delta T is calculated. So A, once you get the A, that is heat transfer area, once you get the overall heat transfer area, then you can decide the layout of the exchanger. You can assume dimensions, diameter, ID, OD, length, number of tubes, everything you can calculate. If you calculate all these things, then you can arrive the layout of the exchanger. Then for this layout, you have to calculate the film coefficient. Okay, then that film overall heat transfer coefficient you have to calculate, and you have to validate with the assumed value. If the variation is more, again you have to go for another trial. That's the concept.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other doubt? Do you have any other doubt?
So I don't think they have any doubts.
Okay, okay, thank you. Can I stop at this point?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.